out kind of the concept and the premise launched by Bob Fitzgerald on with Steiny and Goo, and basically the idea was he would feel completely confident if the Warriors stayed the same. We haven't played this one for you yet.
The NBA now this year proved it. Other than Boston, any team on any night in any series can get rolling, and that's just where we are in the league. The days of, you're going to win 67 games or 73 games, and you're just going to postage stamp everybody all the way through the playoffs, like, those days are over, and I think that's good. I think it's exciting for the league, but it does make people nervous because they were accustomed to 6 straight finals and 4 titles and all that kind of stuff, and that's all fair, too. So, but to think the Warriors won't be interesting, won't be in the mix, won't be worth watching, won't be worth paying attention to, no. We're many years from that happening.
There you go.
That ain't happening anytime soon.
Many years. We're many years. We're not even close. Not only we're not there, we're not even close.
Many years from that happening.
I don't know, man. We got to split the difference here. Again, I find his takes today to be both reasonable and terrifying, because I just think they violate a concept that I've used as something I sort of believe as a standby, no matter what we're talking about, year over year, no matter your business, no matter what. If you are not improving, you are getting worse. I would say that even after the Warriors win a title. You have to go into an offseason and get better. And I firmly believe it is not enough to say, if someone said, well, how are the Warriors going to get better? And you say, well, the growth of the young players. Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Pajemski, Trace Jackson-Davis, and Moses Moody will be a year older, and that is how they will get better. There's no way that can be enough. There's no way. I just don't see it. And I would love for the evidence to be presented that teams with great cores all in their mid-30s are able to effectively do things in the NBA. Like compete, as we're being told here by listening to this.
It hasn't happened. And you're looking at guys who are in their mid to late 30s, not even guys who are still in their peak, maybe 31, 32. And the amount of tread off the tires for Steph, Klay, and Draymond. And for this conversation, we can assume that Klay Thompson is still a Golden State Warrior, although I don't really think that he will be. Bob is making it sound like, at least in that earlier answer, like Klay's still going to be a part of it and they can still win with Klay Thompson. And I don't see it. And I look at the trajectory of how this team has done over the last couple of seasons, and they're trending in the other direction. And if you're asking for Moses and Trace and Brandon and Jonathan to all get better, they're going to all have to get a lot better. And it's all going to have to happen between now and October for that to really matter enough for this team to be a contender.
You and I have been very firm, especially the last few days, with regard to the idea that we now believe Klay Thompson is not going to end up on the Warriors. I just don't see the two needs and desires blending right now as it stands. But I freely admit, boy, we could be wrong.
Yep.
I mean, this is Klay Thompson and the Warriors. So even if he is furious, unfollowed on IG, all of that stuff, even if he's furious, does that mean that in the next 2 weeks they can't have a come to Jesus moment, a coming back together? Klay doesn't find what he wants on the open market, or Klay gets cold feet at the end of the idea of launching a press conference in Orlando. I find all of these things totally believable. I really do. I think the hardest part for me to believe with the premise that Bob is launching here is that Joe Lacob would sign off on it. That just doesn't sound like Joe to me. The Joe that we've come to know, and I'm not going to act like he's a friend. I don't know the man well, but Joe Lacob at different points of this last year was very frustrated and upset with what he was seeing. And for him to watch his team get the 10 seed, get blown off the floor by a very mediocre Sacramento Kings basketball team.
9 weeks ago today. So you talked about how it feels like it's been 4 years. It's actually been 63 days since the Warriors played basketball.
This stinks. This is way too long of a wait. And I got to imagine that Joe Lacob is sitting here watching all these days off going, we're not doing this. So how are you going to convince Joe? Like, think about it a different way. How are you going to convince Joe that that's the right thing to do? We should pay millions of dollars to Klay Thompson and just kind of, based on Bob's words, I guess, like I'm not saying he said this, but leaving Andrew Wiggins out of his list of good players tells me that the Warriors are looking to move on from him, and there's not going to be some great return on that. It's
right, especially when you're keeping Kuminga and Moody and TJD and Brandon Pajemski.
It's just clearing away for Kuminga to be a bigger part of whatever they're doing, and maybe Moody too. So how are you going to convince Joe that that's what we're doing? Your salary's still going to be high. You can get under the apron, but you bring Klay back. We'll dump Andrew for a song, and we'll just, we'll be healthy this time, and we won't get suspended.
Yeah,
How does Joe buy that?
I don't think he does buy it. The only way he buys it is on the premise of them being still very entertaining because you still have Steph, Klay, and Draymond together, and there's value in that. People want to still see that. That would be the sales pitch. I don't know if you can knock on his door and rightly say, yeah, we're going to subtract Andrew Wiggins, and we're going to get another player in here who makes about that much money, somebody who's probably, even if they're as good as Andrew Wiggins and maybe they're just a little bit better or not, I still don't think you can sell that as we got better if that's your only move,
Yeah, I agree with you. 888-957-9570. John and Benicia here on Willard and Dibs. Hi, John. What's up?
Hey, you know what? I just wanted just to say one quick thing. I mean, if you're going to sell that to Lacob, all you have to do is say, hey, don't you want Buster Posey, Brandon Crawford, and Brandon Belt to be your, the stalwarts through the end of the 2010s? Look at the Giants now. That's the Warriors in 5 years if they do not keep improving.
So what would you do, John? Because the other thing is two of the three people that you're comping here, Buster Posey, and the Brandons, with Steph, Klay, and Dre. I mean, two of them still have multiple years left on their contract.
Klay is gone. I mean, through the majority of the year, there's 30 teams in the NBA. He was no higher than 135th in field goal percentage. That is, you could take five guys on every team, and he is not better than 15 of people in the entire of the NBA, or the starting five. No way. He's gone. If I were the Warriors, I would delete him from the Instagram.
Thanks, John. Reminding me of a Rob Parker take that got texted to me yesterday. Rob, I think, was either proud of it or thought it was funny. But they spent some time on their show yesterday on Fox Sports Radio saying that the Warriors should block Klay Thompson.
Gotcha.
They should respond to the unfollow by blocking Klay Thompson on Instagram.
There you have it. Klay finished 121st in field goal percentage, 43.2 from the floor, which is bottom 20 among qualified players, but ahead of Jordan Poole.
Jordan Poole. I knew you were going to say Jordan. Everybody was ahead of Jordan Poole.
And Fred VanVleet, the highly paid Fred VanVleet.
Look, we've said this
ahead
100
of James
times.
Harden.
Yeah, Klay Thompson was not awful last year. The narrative has gotten a little bit out of hand, I think, because, and there's no way around this, we're Warrior fans. We've watched for over a decade now, and that's the bottom line. We know Klay Thompson to be a certain player. He's not that player anymore, so we think he's terrible. He's not terrible. He's just not who he used to be. And I'm not 100% sure that he's willing to buy that yet. And I don't blame him for that. I don't know how you can be a great professional athlete if, like, you wake up in the morning and your first thought is, well, I'm not what I used to be. Let's get to work. He knows. I think he knows, but you can't acknowledge it. You can't make it part of your makeup. You have to believe that you're still able to get better. And he's still, in some way, shape, or form, even though it's been years, he's still kind of ramping back up from injury. Look at the way they've played him. Let's do no back-to-backs, and then now let's do it this way. And only last year did it become like, no, just go play. But maybe a few less minutes. Maybe we'll bring him off the bench, that kind of thing. I think he's got to feel like, and based on his words, he does. He achieved something last year by proving he could go through a whole season healthy. He was very proud of that. I have to think that he thinks it goes upward from here, even though conventional wisdom says that's wrong.
Yeah, and age and the fact that he's had the 2 injuries that he's had. And, I think he can still go out there and play as many games as he did. He played 77 games last year, which was pretty good.
That's great.
Yeah, only a couple of dozen players played more games than that. I'm just looking at the list, and Buddy Hield inexplicably played 84 games in an 82-game season. I'd have to think that's a record. I know guys have played 83 before, but he found a way to play in 84 games.
I totally get it. That's because of in-season tournament getting all the way to the end and play-in tournament,
the
right?
in-season tournament, those games don't count. He was on 2 teams.
Well, but you get there's the chance of playing an extra game if you go all the way to the end, right?
Of the in-season tournament?
Yes.
I wonder if those actually count in regular season stats or if those are standalone games. I'll look that up.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know the regular in-season tournament games that you played in the pool play, those were regular season games.
Yeah, those are actual games. But if you play the extra game, does that statistically count? Does it count on your resume?
Yeah. And there was 2 extra games if you made it to the final, as you were mentioning.
Yeah.
The semi and the final. So
feels to me like if those don't count, they should call it the out-season tournament, not the in-season tournament.
Am I right?
I don't know, though.
Well, the play-in we know are not playoff games. Those are standalone in the stats. And it's hard to even find those stats anywhere if you go on the internet. But
so
that's neither here nor there.
They're not regular season or playoff.
Correct.
They're just their own little thing?
Standalone. Yeah, which I hate.
That's ridiculous.
Another reason why I hate the play-in tournament.
You still do, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I think it's been a wild success, don't you?
It's been a success among, the teams in the West, but if I asked you your memories of the Eastern Conference play-in this year, the play-in tournament.
I remember the Hawks were in it.
Right.
I do remember that.
What were they, 32-46 this year?
I don't know, yeah.
They were awful in the regular season. Not worthy of a berth.
Miami was in it again, right?
I mean, you're the expert.
I know I'm
You're
not.
the guy who loves this thing.
No, well, that's the Eastern Conference. I don't follow them clearly as much as the Western Conference. Oh, that's right. The Sixers were in it. The Sixers, the Heat, the Bulls, and the Hawks.
There you go.
It was great.
Oh, the memories.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. No, it's been a success. For 1 week out of the year, you get games that feel like March Madness games. Loser goes home.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm in. That's fine. You know what I mean? Like, the only reason it doesn't offend me any because this idea of sort of like the joke you just made, Atlanta's terrible and they got in. They were 36-46, by the way.
Okay.
You're right. Yeah, it's a bad basketball team. However, when it was just a straight 8-seed thing, the 8 seed was often not a very good basketball team. Maybe not 36-46, but it might be 38-44, and you're in the playoffs. And you get a whole series out of it. You're allowed to go beat someone. Warriors did it once.
Yeah.
So
handful of teams have done it. Small handful.
Yeah. So anyway,
it doesn't really offend me. It's just I don't love it. That's for sure.
I think it's better than not. Is I guess the way that I would sort of describe it.
Yeah.
It's not like amazing. It's certainly not as stupid as the in-season tournament. That I thought was a complete waste of time.
Those are some of the better games that the Warriors played this year. Some real compelling games. The Oklahoma City game, 141-139.
Right, but
that was an instant IST classic.
But that had nothing to do with the fact that it was the in-season tournament. It had
everything to do with it.
It was just a game.
But they got up for it because it was an in-season tournament game.
I don't agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, they brought their A game. And Oklahoma City gave them their best shot in that game.
Why didn't they play defense then if they showed up for it?
Because they didn't have TJD and Draymond starting together, as Bob pointed out to you. And what Bob left out of his answer was the defensive effort that they gave in the play-in game in Sacramento, where they got absolutely motorboated 118-94.
Yes, they did. All right. Well, back to his premise.
Do it.
And here's another thing I'd like to add, because I think that we've gotten dangerously close to this. So, for instance, even John and Benicia, who just called, Clay's got to be gone. Clay's got to be gone. All right. And then plenty of you share that opinion. Clay's got to be gone. Klay being gone doesn't automatically make you better. Like, here's the only area where I will fully back Bob. Bob is saying they can compete if they stay the same. I've always thought there is absolutely a scenario where that is the best thing that they could do. I don't know what this big move that everyone's predicting. I have no idea what it is. What is it? Is it Butler? Is it DeJounte Murray? I don't know what this move is. So sometimes I do feel like we slip and fall into this conversation. Simply the idea of letting Klay walk makes you better. Well, no, it doesn't. The corresponding move would potentially make you better. And I have no idea what that is. And if that thing is not available, well, then letting Klay walk makes you worse. Can we all agree on just this, okay? Roster stays exactly the same. No changes whatsoever. Except for I'd propose one. Klay's either on the team or he's off the team. That's it. Which team's better?
The one with Klay Thompson on it.
I agree.
But it doesn't make you any better, in my opinion, to where next year is going to be anything other than a quest for the play-in spot.
No, and that's fine. I can accept that. I'm just saying I think that a lot, like voices I hear a lot of people speaking as if just letting Klay walk automatically makes you better. We got to get better. We got to let Klay walk.
Well, the thinking there would be more minutes for Moody, more minutes for Pods, and according to Bob Fitzgerald, those guys are all getting better.
Yeah, they are. But
Moody's getting better, Pods is getting better, Trace and Kuminga, they're all getting better. So you get Klay out of the way, and now these younger guys who are instantly going to improve. More minutes for him.
He's probably not wrong, but that doesn't make you a championship contender or even a playoff contender because you have 23-year-old players who are getting better.
But that would be the devil's advocate response to how do you get better without Klay Thompson? And I don't necessarily believe it, but that would be, if to your scenario, if you just lose Klay and you don't add anyone else, that's how you would get better, is those guys would play better.
Let me describe in 2 words the Golden State Warriors who just remove Klay and don't add anyone to it. Ready? Can't shoot.
I thought you were going to go lottery bound.
No. Can't shoot. You don't have any good shooters not named Steph Curry if you don't have Klay Thompson. That sounds like an awful 3-point shooting team in a league that requires 3-point shooting.
Draymond had one of his better years shooting the ball this year.
Yes, he did.
Put some respect on that man's shot.
For those of you just joining us, Bob Fitzgerald, TV voice of the Golden State Warriors, joined Steiny and Goo earlier today. The conversation broke out with regard to the idea of the Warriors pretty much staying the same. This is part 1 of what Fitz had to say.
Draymond Green missed 27 games, and the Warriors still won 46 games and won 25 games on the road. You're not going to tell me that this wasn't a 53 or 54 win team if Draymond played, some of those 27 games. So where would 52 wins got you? It would have got you the 4th seed. You would have had a home court advantage in round 1. Dallas won 50 games. They went to the finals. So Boston was better than everybody this year. Okay, they won 64. They were the best team all year. They deserved it. They won the title. But you could throw a dart on 7 other teams starting next year. Could Minnesota get hot? I did the Western Conference Finals with ESPN Radio. Saw Minnesota up close with Dallas. Could Minnesota get hot? Sure. Could Oklahoma City get hot? Sure. Did Denver blow a 20-point lead at home in Game 7? That's shocker to me because I think Denver's amazing. Could Milwaukee get everything going again with Giannis? Of course they could. But so could the Warriors.
You know what the hard part about that answer with regard to the Warriors are just like any of these other teams and they could get hot? Like, there's a piece of me that goes, I get it because those teams weren't dominant either and had moments where they looked great and then moments where they looked awful. But if the excuse or maybe the kinder word is the reasoning behind why the Warriors weren't one of those teams is because Draymond missed 27 games, okay, go to the games where Draymond did play. And you said what? The Warriors were 33-22?
Correct.
Okay. Go to those 55 games and tell me what the Warriors' record was against the Western Conference playoff teams.
in those 55 games.
I understand that. I'm asking you to. I'm like sort of like throwing that out there. I'm not saying you need to just do it right now.
I think it's a fun exercise to at least poke through because I'm looking at the first 6 games he played. You played against OKC and you got the win.
Okay.
That's the only one. Then he was inactive. You played 3 straight games, twice against Minnesota, and I'm going to count the game where he played a minute 43 and he was ejected because that counts. So you lost back-to-back games to Minnesota. Now you're 1-2. He only got suspended for 5 games for the Gobert choke. He came back. They split with the Clippers, so now they're 2-3, and they lost to OKC and Phoenix. So now they're 2-5 in games that Draymond played. And in that game against Phoenix, he lost his balance, Mark, and he flail punched Yusuf Nurkic in the face, and then he missed a month. Then he comes back. And I can continue to poke through, but you kind of get the bit where with Draymond, without Draymond, against the good teams in the West, you didn't do very good. I had him at 2-5 right now with Draymond against playoff teams.
That's the problem for me. The problem for me is
Lakers were a playoff team, right?
They eventually they were, yes.
Yeah, so now
came out of the play-in.
And now you're 2-6 because you lost when Draymond came back.
Okay.
And I mean, you kind of see where we're going here.
I see exactly where you're going, and it's why I asked. Because my hunch was that's what it would be. So when you were supposedly full strength and the team that we're being told can compete, you didn't. You didn't. You didn't compete with the best teams. You might have gotten a few wins, but you did not play well enough to show that you were one of those teams.
I got him as a loosely calculated 7-11 when Draymond played against the Western Conference playoff teams.
Okay.
So they were, what does that make them? 26-11 against the other teams, including some of the teams in the East.
I mean, to be honest with you, that's better than I thought it would be. It's still not good enough.
Right.
It's still not good enough. So that's my sort of response in poking holes in this idea as we sort of massage it and talk it out a little bit. I just think that Draymond missing 27 games was absolutely a factor. I don't think we can make it the only factor, which is if Bob were to be sitting here talking with us right now, that's probably what I'd say to him, is he kind of made Draymond missing 27 the only factor in why the Warriors ended up where they are, and I think there were clearly more.
Right, and for me, the biggest factor was you weren't good enough early in the year. You squandered so many winnable games, and remember the early narrative, Mark, was how many 15-point leads they had blown and how many late game scenarios they blew. And, Oklahoma City got them twice on the should you foul, should you not foul. They did it wrong twice, and they lost both of those games. Chet Holmgren hitting the 3 when you should have fouled, and then you fouled him when you didn't have to, and he hit all 3 free throws. And so I think more things went awry than just Draymond Green's inability to stay on